Brought to you by...
Within every journey, there exists a series of object lessons that seek to assist in reshaping our view of the world. Even when finding ourselves thrust into a perilous journey, struggling to survive against a violent plague that ravages the country and the mindless hordes of infected that spawn in its wake. When having to trap ourselves along the track to freedom aboard a train that on any other day would just be another vessel to ferry us through the vast mundane, but today must pass through hell itself, on its way to the last bastion of civilization. These lessons become all the more important. It is, in my opinion, that there exists no greater lesson throughout time and the annals of storytelling that can be applied to society today than the one that exists at the heart of Yeon Sang-ho's Train to Busan. Packaged in a structure similar to Mad Max Fury Road, placing us into a non-stop journey across a country in the throes of chaos, with little moments of reprieve, Train to Busan follows a group of terrified passengers fighting their way through a countrywide viral outbreak, while trapped on a suspicion-filled, blood-drenched bullet train ride to Busan, a southern resort city that has managed to hold off the zombie hordes. Or so everyone hopes. It's a film that wastes little time in settling you into its tone. Gorgeously shot and edited to fit the well-crafted somber nature of its narrative, and featuring a color palette that somehow encapsulates the monotony of everyday existence that we as a society have created for ourselves, but still allows its colors to represent both the severity of its horrors and the importance of our characters' hopes. For a foreign zombie film, there were brilliant choices made in the design and overall look of the infection, choosing to keep a more subtle tone to the infected, while allowing for its rapidly occurring infection on the human body from the moment of initial contact, and the rate of which the infection spreads, depending of course on where in the body you've been bitten, to become much more pronounced. The terror of it then comes from how quickly each bite is causing the infection to spread, rather than the physical trauma that it has on the human body that you would see showcased in something like a Romero film. These zombies take a much more 28 Days Later approach. They are fast, violent, and feral. They don't seem to be as interested in devouring flesh as they are with spreading their disease. They act as the virus they are, spreading to new host bodies as often as they can to further expand their collective force. However, despite all of this isn't your average zombie narrative by any stretch of the imagination. We begin our journey introduced slowly to our lead protagonists, given enough time to learn enough about each of them and the strains within their relationships, to be able to formulate our opinions of each of them based on their actions. We are eased into the outbreak of the infection through the use of news coverage, police and firefighters rushing toward the scene of incidents, and well-placed attacks that occur in the background, just out of our character's field of view. Each event occurring swiftly, almost as in passing, and increasing in volume as the film ramps up in its intensity, allowing the threat of what is to come to emerge from somewhere beyond our character's own self-confined bubble. It builds these moments of suspense, like a puzzle being constructed, as our characters settle in for their journey, ignorant of the horrors that are about to befall them. Our glimpses of the attacks grow closer in proximity to the train, at the same time as we are witnessing an infected woman boarding one of the rear carriages, already in the throes of the rapidly occurring change. It's during these moments that the film masterfully sets the tone for what we are about to experience for the remaining duration of the journey, an unending and unsettling assault of tension. In a highly realistic fashion, throughout every step of this film, we are given very few moments to breathe. Our protagonists are given very few moments to stop and collect their thoughts regarding what they have had to endure. Their struggle is constant and without remorse for the toll that it is placing on their mental state. As a situation like this would be, This creates a tension and an overwhelming dread that never lets up. With each passing second, we are dangled over the edge, waiting for our lifeline to snap, left in constant suspense as to who will make it out and who won't. It's this fear for these characters that acts as the emotional hinge for the filmmakers to create a non-stop thrust forward, forcing us to fight every step of the way on the tracks to survival. We're delivered a high-intensity visual experience here that grips you and keeps you on the edge of your seat, straining each raw nerve to their breaking point, drowning you in an endless torrent of overwhelming tension, a feat which could not have been accomplished without such strong characters. We're presented with a leading man who is initially self-centered, caring only about the safety of himself and his daughter and forsaking all others. He's a man who has lived his entire life by the standards of society, focusing so hard on becoming successful that he's allowed the things that are most important to slip away. Therefore, his relationships have become strained, and he turns towards selfishness in order to hold on to his daughter out of some sort of societal reflex, rather than because of his love for her and need to protect his family. Over the course of the film, we watch as his daughter's kindness toward others imprints on him, and he begins to transform into the kind of man she needs and deserves for him to be. He begins as a contrast to his daughter, but by the end, accepts into himself her values, learning to accept the help of others and to extend his hand to them in return, choosing selflessness over his selfish default. He's shown a mirror of what he could become in the form of the other characters, who reside in their acts of self-preservation over all else, and realizes the error of his ways of thinking, taking the chance to change for the better. We witness the true extent of his character's evolution during the final moments of the film, a heartbreaking moment as we watch him close himself off from his daughter. Knowing that he's been infected, she begs him not to go. He listens to her distant screams as he remembers back to the day she was born, entrusting her life to a woman that he barely knows because he realizes that it's what's best for her. He selflessly lets go of the one thing that he's clung to so closely in order to give her a chance to live a life far better than he ever did, and a chance to become a greater person than he ever gave himself the chance to. The majority of this film stands as a reflection of the faults within our own society, by holding a flame to what happens when society breaks down and humanity's primal nature is given license to take over in the midst of such overwhelming fear. We glimpse who we all are truly underneath, whether we want to believe it or not. It is likely that in situations like this one, outbreaks of war, famine, plague, and utter chaos, many of us would abandon our principles, sinking into otherwise unthinkable depths in the name of self-preservation. We see this once more as they reach the end of their journey, concluding in a moment of uncertainty. They walk on into the tunnel, uncertain of what they will find beyond. A safe haven, or has the infection consumed their last hope? The soldiers sit perched, uncertain if the infection has reached the walls of their safe haven. One last moment of tension builds as they are given the order to shoot them on sight, until they hear her song, the song that she learned for her father.